welcome to Soft Talk. Welcome to a very beautiful evening. Welcome to a very beautiful setting. As you can see from here, this Swayambhunath, that is Swayambhunath, the abode of peace, the symbol of peace with its all-seeing eyes in all four directions, seems to be looking over Nepal. All over its greenery, its heaven on earth, its canopy of clouds here and there. It gives you a very beautiful view of a part of this country. Indeed, the whole country is quite beautiful. It's a Shangri-La, it's a heaven on earth, but of late, this country seems to be in turmoil, one after the other. So let me talk about the latest turmoil in this episode of Soft Talk. Talk about this dispute over Ayodhya between Nepal and India. Diplomatic relations between Nepal and India have passed through a bumpy stretch in course of a year. Worryingly, the worst does not seem to be over as yet. First, there was the dispute over Lipulek-Kalapani-Limpiadhura region. Nepal's act of formally including the region into her political map angered the dear neighbor no end. This despite the fact that Nepal has been claiming for decades that the region belongs to her. Her argument, her assertion has been that she led Indian troops, vanquished in the war with China in 1962 over the Aksai Chin, take refuge in her territory. In course of time, the Indian state fortified her presence in the region by building infrastructure like roads and camps. Nepal maintains that the dear neighbor, the aggressor party, has refused to budge despite repeated requests to vacate the area. Even the dear neighbor considers this region to be a disputed territory. Despite this status, it constructed and formally inaugurated a road through the disputed region to connect its Uttarakhand with the Tibet Autonomous Region of China some months ago. This act of aggression, this act of territorial invasion prompted the government of Nepal to issue a political map by including the Lipulek-Kalapani-Limpiadhura region with a resounding approval from the sovereign parliament for the move. That was the only thing that a small country, driven by years of political instability, could do against a hegemon. Surprisingly, the dear neighbor sent a note to Nepal government over what it called artificial enlargement of territory. While this territorial dispute has already brought bilateral ties to a new low, another dispute has emerged from the choppy waters, with Lord Sri Rama at the center stage. One can easily guess that Lord Sri Rama may not be quite happy with this deepening dispute between Nepal and India over his birthplace. No way for members of the Hoi Polloi like yours truly to know about the divine displeasure or lack thereof. As for the livid saffron brigade from the dear neighbor, It has its own access to grind and Hindutva agendas to pursue on behalf of a neo-fascist and expansionist regime against an increasingly belligerent neighbor that is purportedly tilting towards China. While this Janus-faced regime announces from Ladakh that the era of expansionism is over, perhaps drawing from the strength of an emerging alliance against the superpower to be, it never shies away from doggedly with a continuing doggedly with a similar expansionist policy in weaker, politically unstable countries like Nepal. With provocations from this frenzied lot, including saints and scribes, some elements have started attacking and humiliating Nepali people, Nepali sentiments residing in different parts of India, including Varanasi. Recently, videos of members of a mob tonsuring a Nepali man, writing the name of Lord Sri Rama on his head and making him vent tirade against KP Sharma Oli, the Prime Minister of Nepal, went viral, along with burning of the PM in effigies. That act of violence was the result of this uh, announcement, this call from some Hindu Sena. It's like a religious organization. Later on, some Indian media reports said that the man in question, the man who was tonsured, was an Indian national. But this symbolic act, this act of violence, suggests this increasing hostility. It points towards increasing hostility towards Nepal in India, with segments of the population, segments of the radicalized lot fueling it all. Attacks like these make us question, are our diplomatic relations with the dear neighbor really special, unique, historic, and resilient? If they indeed were, would an alternative discourse from Prime Minister Oli, a learned man in his own right, over the birthplace of Lord Sri Rama, incite such hatred, such violence? After all that PM Oli had done was raise a question over the exact birthplace of Lord Sri Rama. Citing the Valmiki Ramayana, the Prime Minister had argued that it seems quite impossible to cover a distance of about 500 kilometers in a day by traveling in a chariot in those times, when like modern means of uh, communication and transport were not available, and the chariots used to be quite slow. He was referring to the time that Lakshmana and the charioteer, Lakshmana is the brother of Lord Sri Rama, and the charioteer had taken to take a pregnant Sita, the princess from Janakpur, married to Lord Sri Rama, to Valmiki Ashram in Nepal from Ayodhya in India, in present day India, at the order of Lord Rama, after an ordinary folk questioned Sita's character. Minister Oli, drawing perhaps from the works and assertions of Nepali scholars like Professor Dr. Jagman Gurung and Kapil Paudel, pointed, in those days where there were no modern means of transportation and communication, it seems quite improbable for marriage to take place between the princess of Janakpur with the king of Ayodhya. Rather, Sita must have gotten married to the king of a state located nearby, quite close from Janakpur, that is, Sri Rama of Ayodhyapuri. She must have gotten married to Sri Rama of Ayodhyapuri, Lord Sri Rama of Ayodhyapuri. His point was that events mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana, including the marriage between Goddess Sita and Lord Sri Rama, exiling of Goddess Sita into the Valmiki ashram, and her entering into the lap of Mother Earth, seem to fall into place when we take Ayodhyapuri in Chitwan of Nepal to be the birthplace of Lord Sri Rama. This assertion has not only kindled flames in the dear neighbor, instead of initiating a healthy, enlightening, intellectual discussion on the matter, mysteriously it also seems to have offended our leaders, including those from the ruling Communist Party of Nepal and the opposition. Sudden, these politicos who do not even dare utter a word whenever Indian leaders, including the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, claim India to be the birthplace of Sakyamuni Buddha. They have found a rallying cause in Prime Minister Oli's remarks. It should be noted that even UNESCO has identified Lumbini of Nepal as the birthplace of Sakyamuni Buddha. Despite this recognition, the Indian state, its leaders, continue to claim that India is the birthplace of Sakyamuni Buddha. They should instead, these leaders of ours, should instead have read into his logic, the Prime Minister's logic, Nepal Prime Minister's logic, cross-check the facts and come up with studied observation that could have put us on a long and challenging journey to locate the exact birthplace of Lord Sri Rama. The position these leaders have taken should prompt us to ask these questions to ourselves first. Do these leaders really represent the Nepali people? Can we bank on them to defend our core interests? Summing up, this dispute over the birthplace of Lord Sri Rama is ramming into bilateral ties like a ramrod. This is quite hurtful for those seeking status quo in bilateral ties. So be it. Above all, this dispute has once again shown how unequal, how prejudiced, and how frail are our ties with the dear neighbor. Here's hoping that disputes like these will help us set the historic baggage and seek equal and dignified relations with the dear neighbor down south. On this note, I wrap up this edition of Soft Talk. Please just go through my presentation, give your insightful comments, feedback. Please subscribe and like, and your comments, your inputs, let your comments and inputs just start a healthy discussion on the topic. Let it be enlightening, and let them guide us through this dispute. Let them help us find a way out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.